Hello folks, and welcome to this episode of Jay's Tip of the Day. I'm going to try something new, and I'm going to start a series on reloading ammunition. Now, if you look behind me, I have a Dillon 550 Bravo. I've had it for over 10 years, and I specifically, up until recently, was reloading just 40 caliber handgun ammunition. I've decided to try my luck in reloading rifle ammunition. So the series of videos you're going to see will be specifically involving 308 cartridges. Now, before I get started, I'm going to tell you why I chose the 308 cartridge over other cartridges or bullets. I chose the 308 for a number of reasons, and the main reason was the availability of components or bullets and cases was a lot more versus the newer round like the 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, there's a lot of people out there who are going to tell you the 6.5 Creedmoor is better overall than the 308. They're probably right, but I wanted to start off, walking versus running. So I decided to, sell a couple of firearms and purchase my first 308 caliber rifle, which was a Hauer 1500 Action with an aluminum chassis. It's a nice rifle. I already did an unboxing on this thing a little while ago, so just look at that video and you'll see the rifle that I just purchased. So my first set of videos here in the 308 is going to be really about the things that I had to purchase in order to set up everything, my workbench back here, so I can start reloading 308 calibers. So I'm going to turn off the video and I'm going to briefly explain to you the portions or the parts and the tools I had to purchase in order for me to start reloading these specific 308 cartridges. So let me turn off the camera and I'm going to show you what I had to purchase and briefly explain to you what these parts and tools are for, because you're going to need most of these tools that I'm going to show you. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you, I know this is going to seem kind of funny, and it should be normal piece of equipment that you need to have when you're reloading ammunition. Now, when I was doing 40 caliber ammunition, I never used it because I had a carbide die, which is a full-length die, obviously, and I never needed it. I found out the hard way when I bought my first 308 dies that if you don't use it, you can be out $30-something because I destroyed my full-length resizing die the first day I had it, and I was so upset because I tried to fix it and I destroyed it, so it was out $30. And the reason being was you need to lube your rifle cases or your cases will get stuck in your full-length resizing die. So please, I don't care what lube you buy. I've heard everything from people using motor oil to the one-shot, some waxes, leather, kiwi, something for their shoes. Somebody mentioned KY jelly. Hey, if it works. But just remember, you have to lube your cases or they will get stuck in your full-size die, and you're going to be very pissed off because there is nothing you can do to get that thing out with the exception of buying some $17 or $12 tool to get it out. I didn't buy the tool because by the time I destroyed the die, I was so pissed off. I actually went on my front yard and chucked it as far as I could. So I was a lesson learned. Before you start reloading any rifle rounds, you need to get some type of lube. If you don't have one, you need one. A Lineman Reloading Handbook. Now, I've had this thing for 10 years. This is the 49th edition. I'm not sure what edition they are now. A friend of mine had the 50th edition. This is 10 years old. But you're gonna need some type of reloading handbook. This handbook had a lot of information in here that I learned how to reload pistol ammunition. Now, the most important thing about the reloading manual, besides the basics, is load development, because these people here at Lineman actually made ammunition and tested it and will actually tell you what types of powder they use, the overall length of the cartridge, maybe even the primers they use. They'll give you the velocities, what the starting loading charges were up to the maximum load. Let me back up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to get the loading manual because it will explain to you all that weird terminology I just used. For instance, here on this page for the 308 Winchester, shows a graph of the 308 and it'll tell you, how long it is from the front to the back, the width, the diameter. Like this one here that says 308 Winchester, the maximum overall length, which I think is a COAL, which is the cartridge overall length, is 2.81 inches. What that means is from the back of the bullet to all the way to the tip, it should not be more than 2.810 inches, which means if it's too long, when you try to close your bolt, it's not going to cycle and you won't be able to actually close your bolt to fire the round. Now, what I want to turn to here is the load development, because each one of these pages shows what these people in this book, lineman, did to test certain rounds. Now they have here in 308, they have everything from a bullet weight of, let's see, 110 grain. Please, if you don't know what I'm talking about, when they measure bullets and or smokeless powder, the measurement is in grains, not grams or pounds, but grains. So here in this book, linemen, they started off with a 110 grain bullet. I wanted to go off and start with 168 grain, because from what I read, that's normally what most competitive shooters use, is the 168 grain. Now that doesn't mean that my Hauer 1500 is gonna like this bullet weight. I may have to try different loads, hence the term load development, because I have to try different things to see what my rifle likes to eat and what it will fire most accurately. I have not fired any hand loads as of yet. I'm going to put this book down. So just remember, you are going to need some type of loading manual. If you don't want to buy the loading manual, you can get a lot of the information off the internet. The next thing is smokeless powders. Now, in my loading manual, it must have been 10 or 15 different powders that those people in the book used to test out different loads. Now, unfortunately, when I went to Bass Pro Shop, the one smokeless powder I wanted was out of stock, and I had put a note on my phone that the second powder that had it was going to be IMR 4064. Now, these comes in pounds. And what's interesting about a 1 pound of powder is I did the math. When I was loading 40 caliber ammo, it's only 4 grains per bullet. It's 40 grains up to 45 grains per bullet. So I think I did the math. I may get between 165 to 180 bullets out of 1 pound. I mean, for handgun rounds, you're going to get a lot more. So you got to figure out what kind of gunpowder you're going to use. Just look at your loading manual. It'll give you suggestions on what they use. So I normally go to my reloading manual, and I start off load development, what's in that book. And the next thing you need to decide is on the, it's upside down, primers. So normally on a 308, you want to use large rifle primers. Now, I've been using CCI primers for my handgun rounds. I've never had an issue, so I wanted to stick with the CCI. I've read some horrible stories about Winchester primers just going off in the primer tube and just scaring the shit out of people and exploding. So I've never used anything but CCIs. I've never had an issue, so that's why I wanted to stay with CCIs. The next thing you need to buy is bullets. These are, let's see here, Sierra Match King 30 caliber or 308, 168 grain bullets. Everything I read, it seems like most of the people who are making precision rounds are using the Sierra Match grade or the Match King. I did buy another 100 rounds of Hordney match bullets. I'm gonna try these first just to see how accurate my firearm is. If if it works well, I'll just stick with these, but I did buy 100 rounds of the Hordney as well. So those are the components that you're gonna need to buy if you haven't already. You're gonna need gunpowder or smokeless powder, primers, bullets, and one more thing I forgot, you're going to need, obviously, the cartridges or the brass. Now, I didn't buy any brand new unfired brass because the bullets that I bought from over the counter, I'm just gonna reuse these. Now the stamp on this is Winchester, so obviously they were brand new because they fired them one time, so I'm just gonna reload these. So those are the components. I'm gonna show you the next step of reloading rifle cartridges. All right, here's the next step that I found myself in uncharted waters. With my handgun rounds, I did not have to trim or resize the brass. I've never had to do that. I just thought it was not needed. When you're doing rifle ammunition, if you want to be precise and concentric and you want to be hitting bullseyes at 600 rounds, each round has to be made exactly the same, and that even includes the case itself, because if one case is longer than the other one, whether it be just a 10,000th of an inch, it could be the difference between sub MOA or rounds with a group of 2 inches apart at 100 yards. Didn't know that, and it's just very crazy how accurate and precise you have to be when reloading rifle ammunition. Now, if you're just shooting an AR-15, you're just plucking holes at 25 yards, I'm pretty sure you probably don't have to resize your brass. But if you're a competitive shooter, you're shooting at long distances up to a mile, 600 yards, it's very important that you trim your brass. Now, this is once fired Winchester brass out of my rifle, and I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm pretty cheap, so I didn't feel the need to spend what was it, $100, $150 on a Hornady brass trimmer. So I just went with the cheapest way, but it does the same exact thing. And all I gotta do is put this in here. I think Lineman makes this. And then I'm just gonna put it in here, and then I'm just gonna spin it. Now this is set, so each brass case will be trimmed at the exact same distance now, or length. When I do this, I'm also going to measure this with my micrometer. Let me show you that now. The next tool you have to have, it doesn't matter if you're reloading handgun or rifle rounds, there's no way around it, you have to purchase this. I've had this over 10 years, it still works. I think it was 15 or 20 bucks. You can get these at Amazon, but you cannot reload ammunition without one of these. It basically measures, you know, things. I actually used this one time to measure a brake pad because there was something wrong. One brake pad was bigger than the other one and it wouldn't fit. But anyways, this thing, actually not this, this comes in handy. Now, this is the brass casing that I just trimmed, and I'm gonna see what it's showing. It's showing 2.006 inches, okay? Now keep that in mind, that's 2.006 inches. This is a brass casing I haven't trimmed yet. This one is 2.008 inches. Now you would think that, what's the big difference? It isn't, because if you put it or reload this and put it in your AR-15 or AR-10, actually AR-10, I'm sorry, I think I did mention AR-15s in a prior segment. AR-15 will not shoot a 308, so an AR-10 or bolt action. But anyways, back to this. The two difference in inches in both those casings, your rifle will still shoot it, but the most important thing is to try to get everything exactly the same so you can have the most accurate shot. So I will trim every one of these with that hand tool trimmer so they're exactly the same length. So you have to have one of these. You must purchase it. You cannot do without one of these. One other thing I do want to show you that I had to purchase for reloading 308 ammo, because normally when I reload 40 caliber, you know, I just put the bullet from the top of the bottom and I measure the overall length. That's from the back of the cartridge all the way up to the front. If I remember right, my 40 caliber was 2.25 inches. I could be wrong. I got to look at that. I think it was 2.25 inches. But with rifle rounds, you can measure from the tip of it to the back of it. But the bad thing with those is, if you look, I'm going to show you. I'm just going to show you this only one I have. Each bullet that you purchase, the tip may be different. It could be off-centered. So when you go to measure the overall length from the top of the bottom, every time it's gonna be off. Now we're talking about thousands of an inch, but it will not be the same. So if you wanna be very precise, you wanna buy a bullet comparator. Got this from Hornady. Basically what it does, it measures the bullet from the ogive to the back of the bullet or the casing. Now the ogive, if you don't know what that is the portion of the bullet, that's this, that touches the lands or the rifling inside the barrel of your firearm. So what I do is I put this onto my micrometer. I'm gonna zero it back out, and now I'll put this in here and I'll measure the actual overall length from the back of the bullet or the cartridge to the ogive. Remember, the ogive is the portion of the bullet that actually touches the lands or the rifling on your bullet. Now this one is 2.277 inches. Now the bad news is in your reloading manual, it will not show you an overall length from the ogive. These loading manuals are only going to show you the overall length from the back of the bullet all the way to the tip. So that's something where it gets more advanced and precise. I'm still learning how to do this. So you're gonna have to search another video from another reloader to explain to you how to find the actual, the ogive distance. I had a friend of mine actually measure inside my barrel with a Hornady tool. I didn't purchase it because he did it for me, so I saved myself some money. But he measured the actual distance to the ogive or the lands of my bullets. And I actually roll it down here. Let me get this here. Sorry, I had to turn around. But he measured it for me. So inside my Howa, the overall to the lands is 2.892 inches. So 2.892 inches. And the ogive was 2.309. So basically what that tells me is I don't want to have my bullets, my 308, longer than 2.892, because if I do, when I put the cartridge inside and I slam the bolt shut, the bullet's probably going to be jammed up against the lands or the rifling, and it's going to be over pressure. So you want to have it just right before the lands or the rifling. They call it the lands, I call it the rifling, but it's either the bolt, same thing. So this is 2.275, and my ogive distance according to this is 2.309. So I'm going to be off just thousandths of an inch, but it's not touching the actual lands. And I've read that some rifles actually like the bullet right up into the lands, are more precise, and some don't. So you have to do load development. So every time I'll make like 6 rounds, and I'll actually move the distance of the bullet that's set inside my cartridge by changing the seating depth on my dive. Anyways, back to what I was telling you, you need a micrometer, and you better get, this you don't have to have, but if you want to be precise, you need to get one of these bullet comparators so it'll actually measure the ogive up to the back of the bullet instead of the overall length. Okay, I know it's a mess here, but I had to turn the camera around. I want to show you the next thing you need to have. You have to have a digital scale. Now, you can have a cheap one or an expensive one. This one here, believe it or not, was pretty expensive. I've had it for 10 years. I think I spent $150 for it. I haven't had any problems with it. It's pretty cool because there's actually a level over here, so this way it has to be level. It actually shows a little mark here that this thing's stable and it's level. But anyways, it's very important that you do the following. And let me look at the camera and tell you what I'm talking about. Now, when you're loading smokeless powder or gunpowder in your cartridges on a handgun versus a rifle round, let me tell you, it's on a totally different level. Because normally when I pull the handle on my Dillon back here for a 40 caliber, I want it set at 4.0 grains. It's probably going to be off a little bit. It could be 3.9, 3.9 and a half, or 4.1, you know, right around there. Now on a handgun round, it's, you know, since I didn't load, you know, to high pressures, it really didn't matter. I'm still going to be hitting bullseyes at a competition, which is normally 25 yards or closer. All right. Now for a rifle rounds, if you want to be very precise and accurate, remember, like I said at the beginning, each round has to be exactly set up the same way. And one of the most important things is your powder charge. So on my 308, my suggested starting load on my Lyman Handbook book said 40 grains. So this is where it gets very time consuming, is when I pull the handle on my Dillon reloading press, it's gonna put in, you know, it could be 39 grains, it could be 41, 39 and a half. It's gonna be off. So I actually have to take and pull the handle on my Dillon. It'll put a charge of gunpowder in the case, and then manually take the case out of the Dillon and pour it into my digital meter to see exactly where it's at. Now, if there's not enough there, I have to add more powder to it or take it away. If you don't have the right tools, can you imagine trying to take out individual grains? And some of these grains are as small as a pebble of sand. Using a pair of tweezers to take this out, it's very time consuming. So let me turn the camera around. I'm gonna show you what I do. Okay, first thing I do is I have to take this, because I gotta pour my powder in this. So I'm gonna put this here, I'm gonna zero it out, and it should show 0, 0. Now my fan's on here, so normally you wanna be precise. You normally wanna turn the fan off, because anything here, you know, even a knock on the table will throw off your digital scale here. Now I've already charged a case through my Dillon, and I have it set up at 40 grains, but it's always off. So I'm gonna pour the powder in here, and you normally wanna pour the powder in while it's not on the scale. Put this down, and let's see. See, there's too much powder on here. Now if I loaded this and use this in my rifle, it's gonna work, but it won't be consistent. We have to be consistent. So what I do now is I take, where is that spoon at? I know this is gonna sound kind of crazy. I got a spoon here. So let me open up my powder here, because I don't want to waste this powder. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of the powder out. And I want to try to get it right at 4.0. So I'm at 4.3, 4.2, 4.3. This fan. Let me turn this fan. Okay, 4.2, 4.3. So I still have to take powder up. But see what I'm talking about? This is time consuming. This is not pistol ammunition. You have to be very precise. So now 3.97. I kind of wanted to get below 4.0. Walking around my camera, because I wanted to show you I have something called the powder trickler, which is another tool you don't have to have, but let me tell you, it will be a lot easier if you have the powder trickler. I'm trying to put powder in it right now because I don't have any gunpowder in this. Okay. Powder trickler by Hortney. So basically, so right now I'm at 3.96. There's these little grains in here. So every 3 grains is normally a 0.1. So it's almost impossible to see this, but you're going to twist this and the powder will start coming out. It'll trickle out, hence called the powder trickler. So I'm actually counting these. So about 4 or 5 in there. So I'm going to lift this up, shake it, put it back down. And 3.7. So I'm going to put a little bit more powder in here. And we'll try it again. There you go. 40.0. And I normally will let this sit for a little while. And now I know for sure that the gunpowder on my scale is exactly 40 grains. So what I do then is I take my funnel, I put it on top of the cartridge, and I pour the gunpowder or the smokeless powder in the funnel. I need to move this up and down, make sure all the powder goes in there, because if there's like 3 or 4 pieces of grains in here that didn't make it all the way, then it won't be exactly 40.0. So I look inside my funnel, I don't see any powder there, and now I have exactly 40 grains of gunpowder in that cartridge. And this is another piece of equipment you probably should have. You don't have to. This is a tumbler. When I want to clean my brass, is I put it in here, I turn it on, and that's it. Sorry for the moving the camera like that. Basically what the tumbler does is you put the brass in there and I'll actually polish it to make the brass nice and shiny and clean. Most people, I think, actually wet tumble. I don't like the wet tumble. I normally just use the cob and just tumble it that way. Now if it looks like the brass is pretty dirty, then I will, I don't have a wet tumbler. I'll actually put it in a big or a small bucket of water with some dish detergent just to let it sit overnight. Then I'll clean it, rinse it off, and then I'll dry tumble it again. But you don't have to clean your brass before you reload it. Forgot to show you something. After you trim the case, the outside of the case neck and the inside is going to be kind of rough and not smooth. You actually have to deburr that. I have a deburring tool here. This is like the cheapest one I could buy, so it's probably not real precise, because I was just talking about how you need to be precise. I didn't have an extra $130, $140 to buy this contraption where you just turn it on and everything spins and you can just put the case in. So I've been doing this by hand. So basically what I need to do is I'll deburr the outside of the case neck like this, just to keep twisting it. And then I'll just feel the outside of the case to make sure it's smooth. When you put your finger there, you'll actually feel it, that it's not smooth. And then the inside, I just turn the other side and I just put it in here. I just twist it a few times. You'll actually see some brass falling off, but just kind of making this smooth here. And you should, actually you're gonna have to, if you trim your cases, you're gonna have to deburr your case next here. You can't miss it. All right, so that's another tool you have to buy. I think it was very cheap, $5 or $10. It was very inexpensive. And hopefully I didn't miss anything, but the most important part that you have to have, you gotta have to have a press, folks. I don't know what you're gonna use, Lineman or Hortney or Lee press. There's a lot of less expensive, but I have the Dillon here. The reason why I bought the Dillon over 10 years ago was because it reloads everything. Well, almost everything, but it reloads just about every pistol round and rifle rounds. I don't think it does 50. I don't think it does 50 caliber. I don't own a 50 caliber, and I don't have 10 grand to buy one either. But this will do most common rifle cartridges and pistol cartridges or bullets. So you're gonna have to buy a reloading press. It's up to you. I got the Dillon. It's fine. It's a progressive press, which means the shell plate, that's the thing you put the bullets in, or the cartridge. It's got 4 stations, so when I spin the shell plate, it's kind of like an assembly line. It'll do 4 things at one time. So normally on the first stage, it's where I do a full length size. So basically you're resizing the brass and taking out the old primer and putting new primer in. The second stage is when you're putting powder into the casing. The third stage would normally be seating the bullet, and the fourth stage would be crimping. Now, if you don't know what crimping means, let me just briefly explain to you. On a semi-automatic rifle, you have to crimp the bullet. So what that means is the case, let me grab one here for you. The case here, when the bullet goes inside, it has to crimp the top of this cartridge. That's for semi-automatics. That would be an AR-10, looks like an AR-15. Basically, AR-10 is the same type of rifle, but it shoots larger cartridges. Now in a bolt action rifle, you can crimp it, but you don't have to. Now correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but at least for my 308 cartridge, I do not have to crimp this for a bolt action. So from what I've learned and what I read, on a semi-automatic rifle, you have to crimp your cartridge, but the bolt action, you do not. All right, I just made a 308 cartridge in my Dillon. I did not want to go over the actual press itself because I didn't want to spend a lot more time on actually making the rifle cartridge, the 308, because you may have a different press. There's all types of different presses out there, single stage, progressive press, so we're not going to go over that. We're going to talk about the actual making of this specific round. Now I've already showed you how to clean the brass, at least briefly, how to trim it, showed you that. I showed you how I put in exactly the right powder in this. I put 40.0 grains of powder because my lineman reloading book says the suggested starting loads when they tested theirs was 40.0 grains with the max loading of 45. So I'm going to start off at 40. Now the next step is the actual overall length. That's from the tip of the bullet to the back into the cartridge. Now lineman said they tested their load development at 2.775. Now this one here is measuring, I know you can't see the actual numbers here because I'm looking at it, 2.85. So that is off by 10, but it doesn't matter because I'm measuring mine off from the ogive. So I'm going to take the Hordney bullet comparator, put this back onto my micrometer. Just bear with me while I clamp this on and screw it down. Now I'm going to measure my bullet from the ogive. And if you remember, if I talked about it earlier, I hope I did, the ogive is actually right around somewhere here where the bullet actually starts touching the lands or the rifling inside the barrel of your rifle or your firearm. So I'm going to measure from the tail end of my bullet to the ogive, not from the tip of the bullet to the back, which is normally called the overall length. We're going to measure the length from the ogive to the back of the cartridge, and I'm at 2.275. And all I made 8 rounds here, and all of them are right at 2.275. Now, I had a buddy of mine use a special hand device to measure the ogive length inside of my actual the actual rifle that I have, and I believe it was 2.309. So I backed it up a little bit because I don't want my bullet jammed up into the rifling or the lands because it could cause overpressure. So I backed it up a little bit. So I'm going to start developing my load. So these first 6 rounds will be 2.775, and I'll see where my group is. Now, if I'm not sub MOA and my my shot group isn't under an inch, I'll start playing with it. I'll either push the bullet further in and make another 6 rounds and fire those, or I'll actually pull the bullet closer to the lands, and I'll keep making 6 rounds of different seating depths until I find the exact round that my rifle likes to eat. Because if you don't know, every rifle will eat something different that it likes, just like a human being. I don't like, whatever, say I don't like chicken wings, but I like fish. Same thing with a rifle. It only likes certain type of ammunitions. So you have to develop your load just for the specific rifle. Now the handgun rounds, it's no big deal. You just start crank that handle and make whatever the hell you want. But on a specific rifle round, when you're actually doing competition shooting for very long distances, you have to be precise and you have to develop your load for the specific rifle. Now, that was a lot of information jammed into one video. I know it's a little bit confusing if you've never made rifle ammunition. So if you have any specific questions, please direct them to this video and I'll try to answer them. And here in the near future, I'm going to slow it down to different segments of each part of the reloading process to show you the development of my specific 308, because I haven't fired these things yet. I'm actually going to bring my camera to the range and show you me shooting them, or at least after shooting, not the shooting process, and show you what my shot groups are. And I'm going to walk you through the process how I develop my specific load to my specific rifle, so I'm shooting sub MOA at 100 yards. Thank you for watching this video and have a great day.